Welcome to Mythtastic. In today's video, we'll be discussing 10 myths regarding space. Space is so large that most people can't even wrap their heads around it, which makes some excited for what science is yet to discover, and others in fear for what it's waiting to be found. But regardless of what people think, scientists have so much more to learn about space and are working every day to find new information. With many things still unknown about space, many are sure to make up myths about the subject, whether it be on accident or just on purpose to fool people. With many people uninformed with actual information, it's hard to tell what's fact or fiction, which we'll determine in today's video. Myth number 1. There is zero gravity in space. Many people have seen astronauts in space floating through the air doing cool tricks and flips. It makes us wish we could go to space ourselves to have the same fun as astronauts do. Everyone knows that astronauts are able to stay in the air like they're as light as a feather, because the gravity in space is much less than the gravitational pull we experience on Earth. But many think that astronauts and objects are able to float because there's no gravity in space at all. But this is not true. Gravity can be described as a mutual attraction between two objects that have mass. A person's mass seems non-existent in space since the gravity is weaker than it would be on Earth. This doesn't mean that gravity is not present. No matter where an astronaut might be, it will be impossible for them to not have a gravitational pull towards something, since they will always have gravity towards an object's space. For example, an astronaut can have gravitational pull towards a nearby planet, or if there is no planets nearby, they might have a gravity towards something like a nearby star. If there was no gravity in space, then there would be no solar system, and no life on Earth would be impossible. Since Earth and the other 7 planets of the solar system orbit around the Sun because of the gravitational pull the Sun has on all 8 planets, so it's safe to say that the myth of there being no gravity in space is indeed false. Myth number 2. There's a dark side of the moon. Many people, movies, and shows have fantasized the idea of there being a side of the moon that's completely dark all the time. Some people even believe that aliens live on the dark side of the moon. Aliens definitely don't live on the moon, as there's no evidence that supports this. And when it comes to the myth that there's a dark side of the moon, this is kinda true. There's a side of the moon that is darker due to it not being as illuminated as the other half. There's no particular part of the moon that stays dark all times. The moon's dark and light side work like how sunlight works on Earth, as certain areas are dark for parts of time, but it doesn't stay dark forever, as every area gets illuminated by sunlight due to the orbit around the sun. A term that could be used to describe when a part of the moon is dark is called a lunar night. A lunar night lasts about 14 days. Then the dark side of the moon is moved, making it take about a month for the dark side of the moon to do a full lap. The proper term to describe the darker side of the moon should be called the far side of the moon, since we can only see one side of the moon from Earth. The other side, which would be the far side, we can't see. What people think is the dark side of the moon. Myth number 3. Earth is closer to the sun in summer. At first thought, this would make sense, as it would be logical thinking that the reason our planet gets warmer is because it gets closer to our source of heat. But this isn't the case, as the Earth is actually closest to the sun in January and farthest away in July. Although Earth does move closer to the sun each year by about 15 centimeters, it isn't noticeable considering we're around 93 million miles away from the sun. The actual reason that it gets warmer in the summertime is because of the Earth's tilted axis. Earth spins around its axis to make a full rotation once every 24 hours, which is why we get day and night. Since some areas get sunlight at certain parts of the day, Earth's tilt on the axis during its annual orbit around the sun causes certain areas of our planet to experience direct sun rays at a specific time of the year, which is why it gets hotter during the summer. That's why it's colder in the wintertime, since the sun rays aren't hitting a certain area as much. This is also why when it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern hemisphere, since the sun's rays wouldn't be directly hitting the opposite side, making it colder. So in short, the answer is no. The Earth doesn't get closer to the sun in the summertime. Myth number 4. You can see the Great Wall of China from space with the naked eye. Being declared as one of the new 7 wonders of the world in 2007, The Great Wall of China is a man-made beauty that has stood against nature and is still being preserved today. Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the wall to begin being built in 2021 BC. It was finished around 206 BC, but the wall would be rebuilt throughout the years, having its last restoration in 1957 and open to the public as a tourist attraction. The Great Wall is the longest structure in the world at a whopping 3,460 kilometers, or 2,150 miles in length. It has an average height of about 8 meters, with its tallest point being 14 meters high. With the wall being this large, it wouldn't be a surprise to the majority of people if someone told them that they could see the structure with the naked eye, all the way from space. It's something we've been told, whether it be from our friends or something that we've overheard. But no one really has the time to ponder over the logistics of the fact that if it's true or not. Turns out that this is false, as it would be debunked by Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield, who spent about 5 months aboard space station from 2012 to 2013. He said that the Great Wall is too narrow of a structure to see with the naked eye, and that it blends in with natural colorings of the landscape as well, which makes it even harder to see. In addition to the claim from Chris, another astronaut named Yang Lui, who was the first man from China to be sent to space, also said he was unable to see the wall in space from the window of his capsule window. Although the Great Wall of China is unable to be seen with an unaided eye, it can be seen from space with things such as telescopes and zoomed-in camera lenses. Myth number 5. Astronauts need to constantly work out in space. When astronauts go into space, there are many things that can be harmful to their body, some being fatal. That's why astronauts have to wear suits when out in space, not just because there isn't any oxygen in space, but also because without a suit, the human body would boil and burn within a matter of seconds, which is not a fun experience. But that's not all an astronaut has to worry about in space, especially those staying in space for a long amount of time. One important thing an astronaut needs to worry about in space is maintaining their body. Many people believe that if astronauts aren't constantly working out, that they will pass out, or worse, die. Although astronauts do work out every day, it's not something they are constantly doing or need to do to survive. The average astronaut works out about 2 hours a day. The reason that daily exercise is detrimental is because while in space, the human body loses fluids due to the decrease in gravity. The way of replacing these fluids is by working out, since exercise helps the body increase fluids being produced. If the amount of fluids in the body isn't maintained, then astronauts will start to lose muscle and bone mass, which will weaken the body, especially when they return to Earth. If this happens, astronauts will have to take physical therapy. They may not be able to walk at first when they return back home. But working out can prove to be difficult, since the lack of gravity makes it impossible to do exercise such as running or lifting, since objects have less mass and astronauts are unable to run since nothing's keeping them to the ground. That's why astronauts have special equipment to help them maintain normal exercise, keep their body and strength to a healthy standard. Myth number 6. Aliens are real. One of the most fantasized things in sci-fi movies is the idea of another species from space coming down to Earth. The idea of aliens isn't a wild one considering how big the universe is. Earth is just a speck compared to the rest of space. Many people have shared their alien sightings on Earth, from UFO sightings all the way to abduction experiences. There's so many stories, myths, and conspiracy theories on aliens that can make a whole other video on it. But despite all the sightings of extraterrestrials, many skeptics are quick to write them off as a crazy person on drugs or someone looking for attention, which is the case for some of these sightings, but not all of them. When looking at these things, there's very few sources you can trust, considering many news outlets would just use something like an alien sighting as a viral headline rather than trying to determine if a UFO is actually an extraterrestrial encounter. But what source is better to trust than the Pentagon themselves? Back in April, the Pentagon released 3 videos of what they claim are unidentified aerial phenomena. They said the reason they released these videos were to clear up public confusion on whether or not the videos were real and if there was more to the videos. In the clips, the unidentified aerial ships are flying at abnormal speeds. And in one of the videos, the alleged UFO goes from 60,000 feet to 50 feet above sea level in what was said to be supersonic speed. Even with the evidence from the Pentagon themselves, there are some people who are still doubtful that the airships caught on camera belong to aliens. The doubters argue that it could be a foreign nation who has advanced far ahead of our technology without us knowing. Although this is possible, this is highly unlikely considering how far advanced this airship was compared to current technology. It isn't a sure fact that aliens exist, but with the evidence gathered, it is definitely something to consider and look out for. Myth number 7. If someone travels at the speed of light, it won't age them. The speed of light is the measurement of fast light travels, which is 186,282 miles in a single second. Sounds almost unbelievable. So far, scientists haven't found anything that can go faster, nor have we found a way to go at the speed of light ourselves. It's hard to imagine the science behind how an object can go so fast. Many people believe that if a person could travel at the speed of light, then they wouldn't age because of how fast they're going. This is actually false. Albert Einstein's theory of special relativity is the idea that depending on how fast you go, that time will speed up or slow down compared to someone or something else who isn't going the same speed. So if a person's going at the speed of light for a set amount of time, then will age based on how long it took them to travel that distance. But compared to someone on Earth, you'd have aged much slower because of how fast they were going. The short answer is someone does age if they were to go at the speed of light based upon the time it takes them to travel to their set destination. Myth number 8. It's not possible to travel through the asteroid belt in our solar system. The asteroid belt is the area between Jupiter and Mars that contains objects like asteroids, which you might have guessed. In total, there are an estimated 1 to 2 million asteroids, most being no more than half a mile in diameter. If space travel to distant planets was possible, would the asteroid belt make travel between Jupiter and Mars impossible? You may have seen it in Hollywood movies or TV shows when it comes to traveling through the asteroid belt, make it seem like an impossible task to do. An example of this was in the Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back, when the Millennium Falcon is running from enemy ships. So they lose them by going through an asteroid belt and by a miracle make it out themselves, thanks to Han Solo's great piloting skills. It would make sense that traveling through such a thing would be a hard task considering asteroid belts have thousands or even millions of asteroids in them. But as it turns out, Hollywood actually got this wrong. You could actually travel past an asteroid belt easily by flying over or under it. But even if someone had to travel through an asteroid belt, it would still be surprisingly easy. Even with the amount of asteroids in the region, the reason for this is because space is boundless, so there is hundreds of thousands of miles between each asteroid, and the chances of hitting one almost non-existent. So the myth behind traveling through an asteroid belt is actually the complete opposite. So it would almost be impossible to crash while going through an asteroid belt. Myth number 9, the Earth is flat. In going to school, everyone was taught that it's a common and indisputable fact that the Earth is a round sphere. In recent years, people have begun to think that the Earth is actually flat and that our planet, being a sphere, is a conspiracy theory the government's trying to make us believe. I wish we could say we were joking. But some people actually believe this. Even the NBA superstar Kyrie Irving publicly said on a podcast that he thinks the Earth is flat. Many flat earthers claim why the Earth is flat is that photos of the Earth are photoshopped and that GPS is rigged, make airplanes think they are going in a straight line when they're actually flying. They say the reasons why the government makes the public think the Earth is a sphere is because it saves money if they fake a space program rather than invest money in a real space program, which makes no sense. An easy way we can debunk the Earth being flat is its rotation around the sun. Since if the Earth was flat, we would be able to see the sun even if it wasn't shining on us. Another major reason why the Earth can't be flat is because of the pull gravity has on objects and people. Since the Earth is a sphere, objects and people are pulled straight down, since its mass is in the center of the sphere. But if the Earth was flat, gravity would pull things sideways, since its center of mass is at its center, which would be the middle of the Earth. There are many ways to prove that the Earth is a sphere, but long story short, there's no way that our planet is flat. Myth number 10, the sun is a ball of fire. The sun is the hottest thing in our solar system and is what makes life on Earth possible. The sun being 4.5 billion years old, and with about 5 billion years left till it dies out, it's safe to say it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But what makes the sun so hot? With the sun's core being 27 million degrees Fahrenheit, you wonder how something gets so hot or what its source is for heat. Most think that the sun is just a big ball of fire, which makes sense, but this isn't true. The sun is made up of hydrogen and helium for the most part, which is what produces its heat. When the sun's hydrogen and helium fuse together, they give a nuclear reaction, which creates heat and light, which is what gives the sun its source of energy, what gives us our sunlight. If the sun was made of fire, then it would need oxygen in order to stay alive. And since there's no oxygen in space, make it impossible for the sun to be made of fire. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to get notifications every time we upload a video. If you have any video ideas you'd like to see, leave them in the comments below. Your idea